Well, welcome to 2026. I'm Carl Condello here in California. My great friend Sam Carchidi, who's been in the sports reporting business for over 50 years, and another collaborator and friend, Jeff Hare, who's also here in California. And I am glad 2026 is here. It's been about 6 months that I haven't been able to do podcasting. I've had some medical issues and some other personal issues, but I'm glad that's gone. And the first time I wanted to get back into podcasting for 2026 was to reach out to my dear friend Sam, who's now going to be doing his fifth podcast with me. But that's a great time to do the promotion for the great book that he has out there called Bullies, because that was a time period that I think it's almost 2 years that we did a podcast on the 50th anniversary of the Flyers, the Philadelphia Flyers winning the Stanley Cup in Philadelphia. And now you have this book out there that commemorates that time period. And it seems that is going very, very well. And welcome again, Sam and Jeff.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, it was a labor month for Jeff and I. And I was a teenager when they won the Cup. Jeff, I think it was like 9 years old, Jeff, at the time when they won the first one. And so we had a great time putting it together, and we actually started putting together to do a TV series on the Bullies, and we're still hopeful on that. We'll probably talk about that a little later, but in the meantime, the book came out a few months ago, and had a good time with some of the Broad Street Bullies, doing some signings with Bob Kelly, Dave Schultz, Bernie Perrant's wife, Jeannie Perrant, and so it's been a fun time to relive those days and to remind people not only what they did, but to write about what those players have done in the 50 years since then. So I think Jeff would agree the book really isn't a factual account of what they did, because most people in Philadelphia anyway know what they did. But we went beyond that and uncovered some untold stories, and that was the real fun part about it.
Well, yeah, and it just so happens that I relived a lot of it with you guys, because I was fortunate enough to have tickets for the team and to be in the building for the Stanley Cup in '74. And obviously, we just had the 50th anniversary of the Flyers beating the Russians on the 11th there. And so, yeah, I kind of understand that. Now, how the actual response been, numbers on the book, and is it outside of Philadelphia? Are you getting much activity? I know you're on XM, the NHL channel. Anything outside of the Philly market?
Yeah, I've done some other cities in Philadelphia, outside of Philadelphia, including Sirius XM, but we have. Jeff and I were talking about that the other day. We have no idea what the numbers are right now, but we've gotten a great response. And what have your responses been, Jeff?
Well, I actually talked to the guy from Triumph yesterday, and he said that in his opinion, the book is doing very well. Now, I don't know exactly what that means, but yeah, he said it's doing very well.
Yeah, and I know you've had
we've got great feedback. I know that, and it's been fun to do the book signings and to talk to the people. They love reminiscing about it, and they had so many stories. And like I said, Dave Schultz and I did one at Rexy's, which of course was their hangout. And Dave used to own a limousine service, and he had people who used to work for him at the limousine service that showed up at Rexy's, and Dave hasn't seen them for countless number of years. So, it's been a reunion of sorts for some of these people. That's a shot of Bob Kelly and Carl from Carl's Cards. That was our best signing. We had a lot of people at that one, and everybody had a great story. One person brought in a jersey that he got that was Bernie Perrant's, the last jersey Bernie Perrant wore before he was injured, and he had a story about that. So we've had a lot of fun doing this. There's a late great Bernie Perrant. Miss him dearly.
Yeah.
I have to have the little backstory about 2017 about Bernie. That the All-Star game was in LA, and just to let you know, I was coming out a couple times just to check out Southern California where my cousin was living. So that weekend of that All-Star game, I just didn't realize that when I was getting on the plane, I'm going back to my seat, and who do I see They were not in first class, but it was Bernie and his wife because they were coming to the All-Star game for the 50th, and I just get a little, talk to him a little bit, and then all he does is just go out and show you the 2 rings.
Yep.
Always. And I said, Bernie, I was one of those crazy fans to the right of you in section 34 doing those great. He says, thank you. He's very, very pleasant. His wife was pleasant. So it just so happens that little innocent trip I took out here. Now, that was still because he got off before I did. I was surprised he wasn't in first class. He was a regular coach, but he was very, very gracious.
Yeah, he was a regular guy. And I've told this story before. On Father's Day, he would send me a text, hey, just thinking of you. Have a great day today. I mean, that's the kind of person Bernie was. And if he was needed in a soup kitchen, he would be there, cooking the soup. If he was needed to play Santa Claus for some charity event, Bernie put on the Santa Claus costume. I mean, whatever you needed, Bernie was there. And Jeff and I, when we interviewed him, not only did he show us his rings, but he made us try them on. And we have and I'm so grateful now to have that picture. We have a picture. Bernie's in the middle with his thumbs up, and Jeff and I each have one of his Stanley Cup rings on. And
I think there we go.
There we go. That's it right there.
Yeah,
that is a true highlight of the entire process, Carl. That was an amazing. Wait, look at the look on my face, man. That's a highlight of my life right there. I mean, that's one of my heroes. So
it's a shame that the youth do not understand history. Now, back in 2007, 2008, when this little thing called fan photo came out, I was part of that. Photographers going around at the center and at the Citizens Bank Park at the Phillies taking pictures, and you go online. So I was able to do that. So that winter we were at the Flyers and Sixers games, but then they'd always have a booth somewhere with Dorney, Bernie, and Watson and everything. And then there was some young girl that was working for us. We were going to her assignments, walked by, and I said hello to Bernie. And she says hi. She goes, who's that guy that looks like Santa Claus? And I actually almost dragged her to the front into the arena. And I looked at, see that number 1 up there?
Yeah.
He's the greatest player. And that's him. She goes, oh, I didn't know. And that was 12 years ago. So
Bernie told me a great story that he was showing off his rings, and it was just the same thing. It was a young woman, probably 18, 19 years old, and she looked at it, and on the side of the ring it has his name, Parent, or Parent, but she read it as Parent, and she said, "Oh, that's nice. They even gave the parents of the Stanley Cup champions rings that year." And she thought Bernie got a ring because his son played on the Stanley Cup champions, and he was the parent, not knowing it was Parent, that was his name. So yeah, there's and Bernie, wasn't upset. He thought it was funny. He thought it was great. So
yeah, it's
that was Bernie.
Because look, obviously our parents talking about our generation or nothing about the new generation, but I'm glad my generation, your generation, we were able to witness everything live when we experienced, because it was a simpler life. And I know in our previous podcast for the Flyers, it was a simpler time. Things didn't cost us crazy. Sports has really got crazy out of hand. So I'm great. It's great that, you've had this book. And now, is anything possible coming up for the TV series, or that's still in pre-production, all that other stuff?
We're still we're shopping it around. We've got some very promising leads. There's people seem to love it. It's just nobody has stepped up yet to say, yeah, we're going to produce this show. But we've got some very, very promising leads. So, yeah, I mean, there's been some really good people that have looked at it. Bradley Cooper looked at it. Bradley said, I love this, but I'm just too busy right now. So we're just looking for that one person that's going to, really push it over the top.
Yeah, we had conversations with Sylvester Stallone's company, Balboa Production, and I think for about 4 or 5 weeks, Jeff, right? And
at least, yeah.
And they said that they liked it. The bottom line at the end was they didn't think it had the international appeal. They deal with Amazon Prime, but to us, I mean, hockey does have so much international appeal. You look at some of the shows now on HBO, they're hockey shows are doing really well.
Sam, that's all I see. I get frustrated. What's all this stuff doing on here? Why isn't that on here? Now,
yeah. It only takes one, so we're still optimistic.
Have they showed them anything about the HBO documentary? Because I'm actually going to play this little 2-minute clip about the Russian game. But international, because I'm sure between Russia and this, so that back then, the Flyers were the bad guys, except one day, January 11th, 1976, they all wanted to. So I'm just going to play this a little bit. And this is from the HBO documentary about 15 years ago.
Well, let's not send them home disappointed. Let's give it to them.
Oh, what a check with the pitch going high. Flyers getting physical now. Oh, Toronto was really belted by Bill Barber.
You had fun in the league here, but you didn't play us.
Billy went barreling into the corner. They're fighting for possession.
They wanted to experience playing in the Spectrum, and so we fulfilled their wishes for them. Ed Van Impe came out of the penalty box all the way across the ice and nailed Valery Harlamov.
Harlamov again. Harlamov is really belted by Van Impe.
He ran into my elbow with his chin, and down he went.
The Soviets are all standing up. They want a penalty.
He's laying on the ice, he's face down, and there's no penalty, and that was it. Konstantin Loktev just got up and he said, well, guys, we're going home. That's it. We're not going to finish this game.
The Russian coach called his team off the ice.
They are leaving the ice. They're going to go. The Soviets are leaving. They're going home. They're going home. Yeah, they're going home.
You quit? You walk off?
It took just a little more than half the first period for the Russians to retreat.
We don't need this kind of hockey. This is anti-hockey.
Hey, we're not going to put up with this. This is not hockey. This is warfare. I remember running for the press box down there, and Ed Snyder went up to their coach and through an interpreter, he said to him,
tell them they're not going to get paid.
You want to leave? Go ahead. You're not getting any money. And 15 minutes later, the Russian team appeared back on the ice.
So the communists were a little bit more capitalistic than people thought.
Maybe in their minds, they thought if they came back, we'd be more careful or we wouldn't play flyer hockey. But they were sadly mistaken.
Just 17 seconds after returning to the ice, the Soviets were greeted by the rifle. The Broad Street Bullies, pride of the hockey-free world, outshot the Red Army Club 49-13 on the way to a 4-1 victory.
I don't drink vodka, but I did that night.
There was the cartoon in the Pravda in the Russian paper of the Flyers with huge clubs, how we beat their poor little Russian players. We loved it. We just loved it. We think we saved America, we saved Canada, we saved the hockey world, and all from the most unlikeliest bunch of guys you've ever met in your life.
I love that. That's some great
so that's not international.
You're really preaching to the choir. Yeah, we agree with you. And Kharlamov, the Flyers all said when he went down, it was an acting job. Andre Moose Dupont said, I think he thought he was doing Hamlet when he went down.
Sam, were you in the building that day? I was.
I was not.
Yeah, I was there. So, me and my cousin are both looking at it. It's like, they barely touched him, but that was almost like the European soccer, every time a player gets touched, they look like they were assassinated on the field and 2 minutes later to get up. And I wasn't there, but I did talk to Terry Crisp shortly after that and did an interview with him. And he said the same thing, that, it was just a joke and that they left the ice and Freddie Shero deserves a lot of credit because he clogged the neutral zone. And there's Kharlamov after he ran into Eddie Van Impe's elbow, as Eddie Van Impe said. I think he hit him a little harder than that. But there's a collage, a lot of pictures that they used.
Yeah. But the Flyers dominated the game, and a lot of it was because of Fred Shearer, the system he had, and he forced the Russians were used to passing the puck into the zone, and because they clogged the neutral zone, Freddie Shero, again, mastermind, it caused the Russians to play dump and chase, and they weren't used to that. And, as a result, the Flyers just totally dominated. I think the shots, as they said, were like 49-13. And Flyers were dominating before the hit on Kharlamov, and they dominated after. But I should say, I have a photo of Bobby Clark in that game, and Bobby Clark was actually bloodied in that game too. It wasn't just the Russians that got hit. I mean, some of the Russians did fight back. I have a picture of Clark, and I was really surprised because I didn't remember that. And Clark got blood just dripping down his face, and you see the Russians around him, but it was a crazy game because the Flyers were used to being public enemy number one. The NHL and Clarence Campbell in particular did not like them, did not like their style of play. But before that game, Campbell goes into the Flyers locker room and says, hey, you're playing for not just yourselves, not just the NHL. You're playing for all of North America. Make North America and make the NHL proud. And the Flyers actually threw him out of the locker room. They said, you can leave. You're a hypocrite, because he was a guy, and Jeff can attest to this, he was a guy who was against the Flyers style and find the Flyers every chance he could get. And but here, he was saying that they were defending the honor of the NHL because no team in the NHL had beaten the Soviets, and this was the last game of this tour against NHL teams, and the Flyers more than held their own. They were proud. They were a proud team for not only the NHL, as I said, but all North America.
Yeah, I think maybe Jeff stepped out for a second or whatever. So when he comes back, we'll put him back up. But yeah, and I remember on our one for the Flyers 50, we had Lou Nolan on. He was fantastic, and he was mentioning a lot of the backstories back then.
Oh yeah,
that they were actually making fun of Ed Van Impe because he was a little bit older, and
exactly.
they had an attitude about themselves that they were totally invincible. And that's the one thing that they always, people were getting to the point of like, enough is enough. And that they thought that they could do anything. And Sam, we've been watching sports all our lives. Nowhere in any professional sports. You back, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm just got to really seem to have a really crappy connection.
Okay. That's the good thing about this technology. I could, get you back whenever. We're just getting back to about the when we had Lou Nolan on, almost 2 years ago, he mentioned the backstories about how the Russians really were making fun of like Van Impe, and just like they thought they could do no wrong, and the way they did it. And, in all our years of following sports, no matter where it was, no team has ever left the ice, field, anything, said, we're done. But it happened in Philadelphia at that game. And it is amazing that I know they used the CBC, Canadian broadcasters at that point, but I know the Marv Alpert and the local USA with Gene Hart that, they're leaving the ice. And Gene kind of gave the backstory, also knowing that, hey, they have attitudes. They think they could do no wrong, but it's great that, Snyder said the bottom line, you don't play, you don't get paid, which is great.
And just to add to that, Ed Snyder had respect for the Soviets, and he talked to Gene Hart about a month or so before that game, and he said, Gene, I know you know Russian. Do you think you can teach me a little bit so I can introduce them at our banquet? Because there was going to be, I shouldn't say a banquet, it was a luncheon to welcome the Soviets here, and the Flyers were also at that luncheon. And Gene said, I can't teach you Russian in a month or whatever it is. And Ed said, no. I just want to say a few lines to welcome them. He just thought it was respectful to do that. And so he did. He sat down and with Gene Hart, and he memorized a few lines to welcome them aboard. And that day, to your point, he saw them pointing and laughing at Ed Van Impe because they thought he was an old man. He saw them pointing and whispering and making faces towards Dave Schultz, and he thought they were disrespecting the Flyers. So he said, you know what? The hell with this. I'm not going to welcome them. And in Russian. And, he just revised his speech and just talked for a few seconds. And here he spent a lot of time with Gene Hart to learn some Russian phrases and some Russian words. And he said, they're disrespecting us. I'm not going to do this. Here's a great photo of Gene Hart. He's teaching there at Audubon High School in Camden County, New Jersey. He also taught at Lenape High School and I think a few other schools. He grew up in South Jersey. It was a pretty good baseball player.
I was down the street and I went to Haddon Heights. It's a shame he wasn't doing Haddon Heights.
Yeah, right down the street from Audubon. But I just thought that was interesting.
This is like, where's Waldo? Where's Jeff?
There he is.
Yeah, seriously. I'm just
you're looking good now.
Now, yeah, exactly.
That looks a lot better.
That was tough. Yeah. I guess I jumped off right when you were talking about Mr. Snyder preparing the message with Gene Hart for the luncheon against the Russians, and that is just a tremendous story where he got up there with every intention of saying it, and he saw the way the Russians were behaving. And according to, I guess it was Jay who told me this story, told us the story. He just said, "You know what? Fuck these guys," and put the note back into his pocket.
Well, that's just one of the stories. Obviously, it's in the book. Sam, I know I haven't had a chance with everything I'm going through. Where's I haven't had a chance to read the book, but where does it start? Because I think, remember before we went live, I said, what was the actual timeline for the Bullies? Was it the time Dornhofer scored to the 76 when they lost to Montreal? But where did you start the book at?
Well, we actually, the first chapter, I'll pull it up here. The first chapter is actually on Ed Snyder and his younger days, and I'll get into that in a second. But we focus on them from the beginning of the franchise, and all the way up to basically the Russian game, because we thought 1976 was important because the Flyers got to the Stanley Cup Finals and lost to Montreal, and their dynasty ended. And of course, I should mention they were without Bernie Parent, they were without Rick McLeish, and that series, even though they lost 4 straight. They lost 3 one-goal games, and the last game they lost by more than 2, but they were actually leading with about 10 minutes to go in that game. So it shows you how close that series was. But we start with Ed Snyder and the advent of the Bullies, really. Ed Snyder, growing up in Washington, D.C., he was bullied himself as a youngster, 11, 12-year-old kid. And, he was a victim of anti-Semitism, came from a Jewish family. And he was ridiculed by people in his D.C. neighborhood. Not only ridiculed, he was beat up. And his Uncle Sam was a big proponent of standing up. You have to stand up for yourself. And when he was ridiculed, because he told Ed that his Uncle Sam said when he was younger and ridiculed, he would walk through neighborhoods, with the Star of David on and just proudly and say, "Hey, you want to come at me? Come at me." And he kind of gave Ed Snyder that attitude. You have to stand up for yourself. You have to be tough. And Ed Snyder, believe it or not, became a tough guy after a while, after getting beat up several times. And Ed's children told us those stories, and they said, we really think that was the advent of the Broad Street Bullies, because you fast forward to the late 60s, the St. Louis Blues just terrorized the Flyers, not only on the scoreboard, but with their physicality. And after the Flyers lost 4 straight to the Blues in the playoffs in 1969, Ed says, we're never going to go through this again.
Poor Claude LaForge, right, Sam?
What's that?
Poor Claude LaForge.
LaForge, yeah.
Yeah. And he told Keith Allen, we have to do something. I'm not saying that we have to we don't want to get talent. We want to get talent, but we want to get bigger guys. We want to get physical guys. And a few months later, they drafted Dave Schultz. They drafted Don Selesky. The next year, they drafted Bob Kelly. And the year or two after that, they traded for Moose DuPont. And they were the guys that were known as really the impetus of the Broad Street Bullies. I should also say the year they drafted Schultz, they drafted a kid named Bobby Clark, who played with a relentless style, but he was, of course, a great player, a Hall of Famer. So, but anyway, that's how we start the book. It's a long way around that, but that's how we start the book, the genesis of the Broad Street Bullies. It actually started in the streets of Washington, D.C. when Ed Snyder was a kid.
Well, I know watching that documentary, and it shows that he was a risk taker also. And he was working actually with the Eagles at that time. Yeah. And then he was invited for somebody at Madison Square Garden to see a hockey game. This is like early to mid 60s. And thought, was it Boston Garden or was it New York? I thought it was New York. And he thought it was a Knicks game. And he said, no, this is hockey. He goes, hockey, really? And he realized how amazing the game was. And he understood that, if we could bring it to Philly, because Philly only had the Ramblers. They had a minor league team that my uncle had tickets because he worked at Abbott's Dairy. We were able to get him for free. And
Abbott's Dairy, wow.
Yeah. Would it ever be able to handle it? And I think that Snyder built the Spectrum, but Jerry Waldman built the Spectrum for what, $2 million in 11 months? And then how financially he took risks, and he was able to actually find and beg the last bank in Philadelphia for the $2 million that
was the franchise fee to $2 million. Yeah,
right. The $2 million for the team in Baltimore. Just barely getting the franchise was amazing. Yep. And then also in that documentary, they had the parade for the Flyers, the first game or before the team, and Van Impe saying, there were more people booing, like wondering who the heck are we? Was this ever going to happen? But then look what happened within 2 to 3 years, and an amazing franchise to this day will always be part of our life,
Yeah, Joe Watson is fond of saying that there were more people in the parade than came to watch the parade.
Yes.
And Joe Watson, he's as honest as can be. He says, after that and seeing our attendance the first couple of months, I thought, we're not going to be here long. We're going to go to Baltimore. We're not going to be here long. And of course, 7 years later, just said there were 2 million people at the parade. And then the next cup, there were 2.3 million people. To compare that with the Eagles last year, there were 900,000 people. So the Philadelphia Flyers started this trend. Philadelphia was starved for a winner. They were the city of losers. Yeah. And the Flyers started this trend of Philadelphia sports teams doing really well. And by 1980, all 4 teams were in their respective finals, and give the Flyers credit for starting that renaissance.
Well, yeah, the Flyers were the first ones just because of what was going on with Philadelphia sports at the time. The Eagles were terrible. The Sixers outside of 1967, they were horrible. Then the Phillies, still going back to 1964, Philadelphia was just starved for a championship, and the Flyers gave that to them. And also the Flyers, just the team, reflected so well on the city of Philadelphia, because that's how those of us from Philadelphia consider ourselves. We consider ourselves that we're fighters. We are guys that hustle. We are guys that don't say no. We are guys that don't take the easy way out. So that team reflected back on the city of Philadelphia probably better than I think any team in Philadelphia sports history.
Well, guys, I'm actually going to give a theory that why it clicked. It needed a hook, because obviously they were an expansion team. They weren't winning in the beginning. But I actually have to give the media, and actually this man, Gene Hart, is the one who actually trained and made people understand the game of hockey, and his enthusiasm, the way he called the game for influence. I hate to use the term now, influencers back then to us, to watch a game on TV and then to ask our parents, because we weren't driving yet, can we go to a game? Once we went to a game, we were hooked.
Yeah.
I know my cousin Vince is not on here, but he says hockey was our god. We couldn't live without it, and that went through the whole Philly area and to our parents to say, hey, let's watch the game on TV. Let's go to another game. And that's where I really think how it really grew. And then they became successful. So they were at the gate successful before they really became successful. Am my theory correct, Sam? You feel the same way about that? That with Gene, the way he was expressing the game, and even Stu Nahan the first year or two, that got me hooked.
Oh yeah, no question. I mean, how many phrases do we still use, or do you still remember?
Doctor,
it's right out front. They poke at it. They poke at it. Yeah. I mean, not just he scores for a case of taste.
At the end of a period, like 3, 2, 1. Okay, we'll be back after this commercial for Taste of Cake.
Yeah. And he was such an ambassador, and he was great for Flyers. I never heard it put that way, that in a way he was an influencer, but you're right. He was an influencer. And who was really good too? He doesn't get much credit. He does in our book, but Joe Scott. Joe Scott would give away tickets when the Flyers were first started. He was one of the owners and on the Flyers board, and he would give a ticket to a student if they brought their parent along. And as you said, hockey in person is 100 times better than it is on TV. Unfortunately, to me, the sport doesn't translate that well on TV. I mean, to me, you can watch baseball. It's better. All sports are better in person, but hockey is 100 times better in person. Yeah. And, you can still enjoy football on TV and baseball and basketball, but hockey in person, there's nothing like it. It just has a different perspective than it does watching on TV. And Joe Scott handing out these tickets to students, as long as their parents bought a ticket, that was genius, because these kids that went to the game, they got hooked, and then they would say to their parents, hey, can we go again? When we go into the Flyers game again? And gradually, the Flyers became a big draw. In fact, it was early in the second half of their first season, they beat 2 of the original 6 teams in back-to-back games.
Saturday, Sunday night games, yes.
And that really, you were there, and it influenced the fans to, hey, this team is pretty good. They're an expansion team, and they're beating the veteran teams, and that's when they started to take off. But then, unfortunately, for the second time that year, the roof blew off, and the Flyers had to play several home games on the road. They played Madison Square Garden, they played in Toronto Maple Leaf Garden, and they played in Quebec City.
Yeah,
and they got back to Philly for the playoffs that year, but it was a crazy first year.
I actually watched it live in Toronto. The crazy Zidell, the stick one,
6-wing, yep.
Yeah, and they, certain things are etched in your mind. So you see kids today with their influences in sports and music, whatever it is, and that's what it was for us back then. And my uncle, who was older, he was in his 50s then, but he was a big basketball. He was a Sixers season ticket holder from Convention Hall and always took us to games. But I said, Uncle, go to a Flyers game. You'll get hooked. And he took my aunt to a game, and he came back the next day and said, F the Sixers, I'm getting Flyers tickets, so because he loved it, and so, yeah, I'm glad the book, is doing good. Hopefully you guys will be able to get this to a visual medium, but I think because he said it's time to show them that whole Russian thing. It's never been done in this history of sports that a team actually left the field or the ice of anything professional that were done. It never happened.
Yeah.
So
as you said, money talks, and they came back when they were threatened not to pay them, and Gene Hart said he went down there during this break, and and he understands Russian, and the phrase he kept hearing is that you're animals, but it was an excuse because they were getting beat by the genius of Freddie Shiro. And even though the game was 0-0, the Flyers were dominating the game.
Dominated
them.
Yeah, that was if there's ever been a domination with a tie no score, it was that. They just crushed them. And then just the wonderful thing is when they come back, that it's just a matter of seconds later that the Flyers take the lead. And to tell you what kind of domination that was, Joe Watson scored a goal. Joe Watson scored a goal.
And I think it was shorthanded. I'm not positive. I believe it was.
I think it was as well, yeah.
And Freddie Shearer said, you sent Russian hockey back 5 years or whatever the number was, by Joe Watson scoring a goal, because Joe was a defensive defenseman.
It was the rebound from Selesky's shot coming in. So
yeah.
Who scored the fourth goal? I know Leach, McLeish, Watson. Who scored
McLeish, Watson?
Yeah, I don't remember. It seems like it might have been somebody nondescript player, but I can't remember. Can't remember right now.
Hang on a second. Was Larry good enough on that team?
No,
was it him? Bladen. Bladen got it?
Yeah.
We're going to look at that.
I'll look that up while you guys are talking. Goodenough might have gotten into that game. You know what? It might have been Larry Goodenough. That's a good call. I think it might have been.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that's sticking out to me.
Right, actually. I think you're right. I'm going to look that up while we're talking.
Jeff, I got to give you a question now. Is Sam doing a lot of heavy lifting and promoting for the book? I know you're out, doing your jobs and everything. So have you been on any of these book signings or anything? Or are you planning on doing
No, because, I tried to find some places that would be interested out here in LA and wasn't able to find it. There's not a real strong, Flyers, fan organization out here that you could get people to come to, certainly an arena or even a bar like in Philly.
Yeah, obviously I would go.
Well, you got to find a place out there, Carl, for Jeff, and then give him a call.
But actually, I have a business meeting in Huntington Beach tomorrow. And I'll be talking to this other person that's doing some podcasts.
Wait, I got to give my writing partner, Jeff, a round of applause. It was Larry Goodenough.
Good.
Nice.
I told you, I thought it was a nondescript person, and you couldn't get more nondescript. And with all respect to Izzy, who's a great guy. I see him in a lot of these alumni functions. Great guy. But he was not known for his scoring, and
no.
But he was the fourth goal scorer. It was Reggie Leach, Rick McLeish, Joe Watson,
two defensemen.
Yeah, you had two defensemen. Yeah.
So Jeff, for my original question, I said Sam has been doing a great job, and I actually saw this time when you were on Sam, you were with Lou on Channel 17 on a morning show.
Yeah, we did that a few weeks ago. Yep.
Yeah, it's a nice little segment. Now, did you do any other Philly local TV or anything with that, or has anybody?
No, we did. I did a lot of radio, but no TV. And Lou, I think right there is doing the Pico power play.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we had a good time doing that. And thank you.
NBC, you haven't, Barkan, you haven't been on. Do they still have a Daily News Live? I know it's not Daily News.
No, they haven't had that for years.
No, they haven't done that.
No. But we've done quite a bit of promoting, and people have been very kind to us.
Well, the one good thing about this, I'll have this on YouTube probably within a couple of hours after we're finished. And then I also put it on, your Facebook page, my Facebook page, but then there's other Facebook pages for the NHL for 70s. I will put that on there, and a couple of Philadelphia history pages that get a lot of. So hopefully you'll be able to get a lot of maybe play from that too. That's the good thing about this medium. So
we'll throw out a trivia question: who scored the fourth goal in the Flyers' 4-1 win over the Soviets? And we'll send them a book. But
yeah, that's cool. That's good.
But they have to. I don't know how you can prove this, but they have to do it without hearing Jeff's answer. But
I know they go the same thing.
Maybe I'll throw it out there on the Twitter or something. But people now can just look it up, do a Google search. But
so there's many ways that back in the day, because I actually took some pictures and about Flyers, but I think it was really interesting. I don't think it was in the book, but the way they travel and how travel has changed. That when Flyers used to travel, they were all suit and ties, and the old Philly International, you had to board outside, and I guess this was when they were in Toronto, and they were all going through customs then. It's just like, it's a different world today. It's.
I got a great story, unless you want to tell it, Jeff, about Gene Hart on the plane. And
go ahead.
Kelly. They're traveling. They're in the air, and or just getting ready to take off, I should say. And Bob Kelly, can you imagine doing this now? Bob Kelly asked the stewardess, "Can I have the microphone?" And she said, "Yeah, sure." And this is a commercial flight back then. And so Bob Kelly grabs the microphone, and he says, and he disguises his voice, and he says, Gene Hart, please stand up. And Gene's like puzzled and startled, and what's this all about? And he announces again, Gene Hart, please stand up. And Gene Hart stands up. And then Kelly announces, your seatbelt extender will be delivered shortly. Because Gene was a little hefty, and Gene was not happy, and he knew it was Kelly, because those two had a great rapport and they loved each other dearly. But they're the kind of things they did. But can you imagine that happening now?
Oh.
Somebody giving control of the speaker in the airplane to one of the players. But
Sam, that's a great lead into that. The day the Flyers won the Cup, Shiro wrote that, you win today, you stand together forever. But the camaraderie with all the players, they did almost, I hate to use the term, they were almost like their own Goodfellas. They all hung out, they did everything. But in today's world, I look at this picture.
That's Bernie and Billy Clement, arm wrestling. Yeah. That's Pat Fietto, the owner of Rexy's, in the background. Of course, Freddie Shiro drinking Michelob's in the front.
Well, smoking a cigarette. Now, where in today's sports world would a coach of a major professional team be sitting with fans, drinking a beer, eating a slice of pizza?
That's a great point. Those guys had more fun. I've talked to them about it, and they don't belittle or begrudge the players of today who are all multimillionaires, but they had so much more fun back then. And I will say too, it was a different era, and it's good for them that there were no cell phones back then, because they would have gotten a lot of
So, Carl, I don't know if you know this story. One story that we got when we were talking to the players. I can't remember who told us this one. Could have been Bob Kelly. I'm not positive. But so they would go to a bar downtown, and then they would pour out of the bar and go. They would go on their way. They're going to go to another bar. So they're all going to get into their cars. Well, the Philadelphia police are there with the paddy wagon. And rather than arrest them for getting into their car, they put them all in the back of the paddy wagon and take them to the next bar.
Yep.
That would never happen now.
Well, I have to interject that I know when you were all putting this all together, Sam contacted me because I had a previous friendship, little relationship with an ex-wife of a certain player. I will mention it because she basically refused to be interviewed because of other situations. But boy, did I hear a lot of stories that she mentioned to me about stuff like that. I won't mention the name. Sam knows who I'm talking about. But the couple of years, and she would mention a lot of different things about that. Well, I said, we go, really? That really happened? She goes, yeah, that really happened.
Billy Clement told us a lot of stories too that made the book, fortunately. So yeah, a lot of some of it was innocent fun, and some was
some of
crossed the line a little bit.
It's just like a band of brothers. They're guys in their 20s having the time of their life, doing what they love, getting paid relatively well for the times,
and not too much more than the regular Joe. Which is why a lot of them, when they retire, like Dave Schultz had about 8 different jobs, because he really. And you feel bad too, because these guys deserve to make more money, but that era they didn't. Dave Schultz, after he retired, owned a limousine service. He was a stand-up comedian for a while. He did a lot of different things, and never quite found his niche. But a lot of these guys, they worked regular jobs. It was like the Phillies players in the 60s. They, didn't make enough money during the season. So in the winter, they were car salesmen, they were bartenders. And of course, the athletes of today, it's different. But on the other side of the coin, they have to train 12 months a year. The players from the Flyers won the Cup, they didn't train in the off season. They drank beer, they partied.
Went back to Canada.
And they used, the exhibition season to get in shape.
Right.
And it was just different. But as you said, they had a lot of fun. They really did.
And they celebrated well when they won. That's the great thing.
I love that picture of Fred.
There's the other one with his wife.
Yeah.
And it's sad that I saw, was it a contract dispute that he ended up going to the Rangers, that the Flyers did something that didn't pay him, and then he just left and then went to the Rangers? That was
that was part of it. And some Flyer fans are bitter that he went. And but Freddie did all he could here, and then of course he got the Rangers to the Stanley Cup Finals. Just a brilliant man. I think it took way too long for him to get into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Just a brilliant coach, and the players from Bobby Clark to Bob Kelly, they talk with reverence when they talk about Fred, and he had I forget, it was Schaefer. It was Schaefer beer. He would have a couple cans of warm Schaefer beer in his briefcase.
Two cans of
carry with him. And one of the players said that the Flyers weren't really into getting into the weight room back then, and Freddie took out the soda machine and had them install a beer machine there, and all of a sudden players started working out because they had a beer replaced the soda in the machine. So,
during that era, Sam, I was always a photographer, and I know we discussed why I lost an 8mm of the cup-winning game, but I always would take my camera to a game, but I never really caught anything until the 7th game of 75 against the Islanders. And I wonder if you could remember this goal. That's my picture from my spot.
Is that Billy Smith or?
That's not Billy Smith. He played for the Flyers afterwards. I forgot it. All of a sudden, I forget his name. But that's Dornhofer scoring the first goal within 35 seconds of the 7th game against the Islanders.
I don't see the picture, but was it Chico Resch?
That's Chico Resch, yes.
Chico was there that year. I didn't realize he was there. I thought he was there a little later. How about that?
Yeah, that was Chico Resch, and I finally got so that's my own little contribution to that. I got one goal. So, yeah, it's great reminiscing. I'm glad the book is out and doing well. There's many, many, many things we could talk about. And Jeff, I know you mentioned back, and actually became a short. There's actually through this this program here comes up with shorts a lot of times, and I put it on YouTube about your rant about bringing back Kate Smith.
Oh, good.
And it got a lot of play. And, and for the life of me too, please bring back the statue,
Yeah.
Because it didn't mean a lot back then. And I don't have any idea the context of why she was there and the influence she had of that. It was a good luck charm, and it's just whole part of that mystique that we all grew up with, and here's Bernie with her in 74, 75,
Yep. No,
I'm just looking up the box score. That game, it was Chico, and Chico made 36 saves on 39 shots in that game that you just showed.
Yeah, that was amazing. But that's the other mystique, that whoever had except with Montreal, that great singer that used to sing the anthem, Dissette. Next to that was, Kate Smith for the Flyers, and even her rendition that they had on, tape when she wasn't there live. That was all part of it. Didn't the Islanders and the Esposito give her roses or something during the finals?
Yeah. It was the Bruins. The Bruins gave her, Phil Esposito and Bobby Orr brought her roses.
Yeah, and the Islanders went up and shook her hand before Game 7 too. Kate Smith. It's funny because I talked to Lou Nolan about that. He said that for the Bruins game when they gave the flowers, Kate said, "Isn't that nice that the Flyers, had flowers for me?" She thought they were presented. The Flyers gave them to them to present. And then when she found out, no, the Flyers had nothing to do with it. She threw the flowers in the trash can.
The trash.
Yeah. But that's great. We got to give Lou Scheinfeld credit for that. He was the innovator who thought of putting the God Bless America on and later on inviting her. But he was disenchanted by the fans' behavior in the late 60s because back then the Vietnam War is raging and the fans are being disrespectful when the national anthem was being played, and some were standing, some weren't, some were booing, and he said he had enough. And he talked to Ed Snyder, and Ed was half listening to him when he said that, I got this record and I played it through the speakers of the Spectrum with nobody there, and it just gave me goosebumps. And Ed said, yeah, but he really wasn't paying much attention. And lo and behold, about a week later, he played it before a game, and Snyder was livid because he thought, what is he doing? You broke tradition. And but then the Flyers won that game, and after the game, fans came up to Ed's box and said that was a great idea to have God Bless America. Plus, the Flyers won, so it made everybody happy. And but he got dozens and dozens of compliments, and. Afterward, he talked to Lou, and he says, "I don't know how you did it, but you're a lucky SOB because people seem to love it."
And as superstitious as Ed was, that fit right into his personality. This song was played before a game that they won. So with Ed's mentality, then we play it again, they're going to win again. So it just fit into Ed's crazy kind of his fascinations with superstitions.
Yeah, he was very superstitious. If you were in his box and the Flyers led 2-1 after the first period, you were not allowed to change your seat because, hey, we got to build a 2-1 lead. You sit in that seat, you sit there, you don't move it. And he actually once, believe it or not, kicked Donald Trump out of his box because Donald Trump was there as a visitor and he wasn't paying attention to the game and he was talking and he was annoying Ed, and Ed said, "That's it. You don't want to watch the game. You want to talk business. You want to talk about something else. We'll go to dinner sometime, but I'm here for the game and you're not. So just get out."
Well, Lou, get the hell out of my box.
Lou had a great, conversation with us, on our other podcasts about, him almost putting him on hold when he called down while he was taking penalties from the referee. He says, "I don't care what you're doing. When I call, you pick up the phone, no matter Jesus Christ could be down there. You pick up the phone." That was hysterical.
Yep.
Yeah, because Lou had a direct line to Ed Snyder, Lou Nolan.
Hotline, yes.
Yeah, by the penalty box, right.
Yeah. So, Sam, I know this book is going good. Now, do you have anything now scheduled for the new year for more, book signing?
Probably wait until like Valentine's Day. We may do something, and the next one after that will be Father's Day. But you can still get the book on Amazon.com or on Triumph.com. Amazon's probably the easiest way. Sometimes they run specials, and but I'll be. Hopefully, Jeff will come east and we can do one together. But
I'd love to.
Yeah, Father's Day will
have Sam come out here because he hasn't been out here since 6 years when I was meeting with him at that great place in Laguna when the Flyers were here that New Year's Eve at the Staples Center.
Tony Civittoni, who was one of our biggest backers in Laguna Beach.
And that still I tell people about. Did you see what that house is trying to go for now? They're trying to sell. I don't know if it's been sold, but
it has been sold. It's been sold for probably a couple of years now, maybe a year and a half.
Yeah, it went for $40 million.
No, it didn't go for that much, but I think they wanted that much.
That was the listing, but I still mentioned that when you were out here, that was an amazing 3 or 4 days.
Tony was a big backer for our book and for our TV series, and we couldn't have started it without him, and we're trying to make him proud now that we lost Tony a few years ago, but he was the biggest Flyers fan in Southern California, maybe tied with you guys, I don't know, but hopefully Jeff will be back east this summer, maybe, because I know Dave Schultz and I are probably going to do a couple signings down the Jersey Shore, because Dave lives in Dave lives in Summers Point, which is just outside Ocean City. So we'll make the rounds down that area. But thank you for having us on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I really appreciate, all the years. And then, I know, Jeff, I have to do this for Sam because, Sam and I go way back. He hired me take pictures back at the old vet one time. I know he was doing interviews back day. So,
who's that guy with the black hair? Wow.
I know. And it's, and you remember this time back in Atlantic City back in the late 90s?
Oh, that's Frank the Animal by Lois.
Yeah.
And Lucy Jones.
So,
great friend.
Good old time. And it was just so happy.
That was Channel 53 in Atlantic City.
Yes, and I was living down the shore at that time, and I was watching that local channel. I go, oh my God, there's Sam. And that's when I called up, and we had a friendship after that. We kindled our friendship after so many years that lost kind of touch. But
you make it sound old, Carl. Come on.
I feel old after what I've been through. But anyway,
better days are ahead, my friend.
I know. That's what I'm looking forward to 2026. So anything in passing, I appreciate you guys. I had a lot more pictures, but I think it's good to talk about what we experienced in the book, and hopefully the TV series can come up sometime.
No, I think Jeff, you want to talk about what really inspired us in a way, the love affair between the Flyers fans and the Flyers. And
and I think it continues to inspire. I mean, that was the whole basis for this. Is, to me, it's always been a love story. It's the love story between the city and this team that it's a love story that's never going to end. People still respond to the Bullies in such a way, and it's just because of how beloved they are in the city of Philadelphia. Hated other places, but beloved in there.
Well, good.
And the funny thing is, Joe Watson said a good friend of his was in Prague, in the Czech Republic, a few years ago, and the cabbie picked him up at the airport. He said, "So where are you from?" And he said, "Philadelphia." And the guy turned to him and said, "Oh, the Broad Street Bullies." And this is in Czechoslovakia, in the Czech Republic. And that name, that moniker, Broad Street Bullies, is known around the world. And Ed Snyder would always tell people, whether he would talk to reporters, players, if you're ever on vacation, if you go somewhere and you see somebody with a Flyers jersey on, let me know, take a picture of it. Because he took pride in spreading the Flyers logo globally. And they certainly did. And the 74 champion, 75 champions, of course, had a lot to do with it.
Yep.
Well, guys, I really want to appreciate you being on again, and maybe we could talk again down the road about some other things. But Sam, I appreciate your friendship through all the years and being one of my.
Thank you, Carl. My pleasure to be here.
Talk to, and I hopefully 26 is going to be good. Just stay on a little bit afterwards because we have to make sure everything downloads to the server. So once we finish, let's talk a little bit and make sure everything downloads. But I really appreciate it again, guys. Have a good one. Have a good 26.
Thanks,
good luck. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Carl.
Jeff, hopefully we could have lunch one day out here.
Carl, I would like that. Yeah, I would like that. I'm going to do a movie down in Atlanta, but I get back just right around March 1st. So I'd love to get together and have lunch.
Sounds good. We'll exchange numbers offline. All right.
All right. Sounds good.